This is Dear Strategy, episode 126. Welcome to another episode of Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions about product and business strategy. Real questions from real people in real companies, just like yours. Welcome back, strategy creators, to another great episode. This is episode 126. Today we have another strategy question for you, the traditional format. And before we get to that question, as always, I want to just give a shout out to the sponsor of our show, the company that I founded and created and work for, Strategy Generation Company. We provide training and tools and resources and workshops and all kinds of great things for product managers and businesses who are interested in developing strategies. So check us out at strategygeneration.com. You'll see all the services that we have to offer. And if you're interested in getting in touch with us, you can click on the contact link. That will go directly to me, and I will be getting back to you with some more information about how we might be able to help your business to grow. So with that said, let's go ahead and get to today's question. It's another, of course, interesting question, as always, but it's pretty broad. And I want to address it in a couple of different ways. So here is the question. Dear Strategy, is there a way to test your strategy prior to implementation? So there are lots of ways I can go with this, right? And I'm going to start by saying, if you have the desire to test your strategy out, you may be thinking of strategy in the wrong way. Now, that's not to say that if you can test it, it wouldn't be a good thing. It would. And I definitely recommend, and I'll give you some ways that you might be able to do that. But the mindset of being a strategist, right, shouldn't necessarily be that strategy is going to be a sure thing. Your strategy is almost never assured. And I've given this, obviously, a lot of thought over the years about, what a strategy is. And, a lot of people will say strategy is essentially a plan to achieve a goal. And I've said that actually for many, many years. And it is, right? But I kind of correct myself in recent months, years, whatever else, because it is actually one step beyond just a plan to achieve a goal, right? What it really is a plan to achieve a goal under a set of anticipated conditions. Okay. Now that qualifier at the end is really, really important. And I'll tell it this way. So recently, my family and I went on a trip to Salem, Massachusetts. We live in the, New England area, and we always go to Salem, Massachusetts around Halloween every year. And so every year we'll go and we do kind of the same types of things, right? We go stay in a hotel and we enjoy the festivities. They have an outdoor festival, all kinds of different things. Just get in the Halloween spirit. Highly recommended by the way, if anybody has a chance to visit. But this year, of course, things were a lot different because of COVID. And so we were thinking, do we want to go? Do we not want to go? Whatever else. And we decided to go. But before we went, we did some analysis, right? We analyzed what we thought the conditions would be there. How many places would be open? Were they going to do the festival or not? We also anticipated what we thought other people would do. Would they come or would they decide to stay home because of COVID? And if they did come, would they reserve things or would they do like we normally do when we go to Salem is, we just kind of wing it, right? Because there's always so much to do. And we put all of that together in our brains. And then what we did was, based on the best information we had, we anticipated what we thought would happen. And then we put together a plan based on what we thought would happen. And of course, based on achieving the goal we had, which was to go up there, have a nice time, all these different things. So the plan that we had consisted of a complete itinerary that mapped out exactly where we wanted to be and when. We pre-reserved everything. And we did that well in advance, knowing or thinking that most things would be closed and most people would be winging it and all these different things. And so we mapped it all out. And we had an amazing time, right? And the reason we had an amazing time was because all the things that we anticipated were actually correct. Now, that doesn't always happen, by the way, but that's what happened in this particular case. Now, as we were going through our plan, we met a lot of different people who had different plans, right? And their plan basically was going up there. They had an itinerary of things that they wanted to do as well, but they didn't reserve it. They didn't do the research. They didn't think about what would happen. So their plan was no less a plan than ours, but it was far less strategic than ours because they spent a lot less time trying to anticipate what conditions they would be faced with. So this is a really important clarifying point for strategy, is that what you're going to try to do as much as possible is predict the future, right? And you're going to do that by doing as much research, as much data collection, as much insight gathering as you possibly can. And based on all of that, then you're going to put together your plan based on achieving whatever goal you have, and then you're going to execute it. So why am I going through all of this with respect to this particular question? The reason I'm going through it is because you're not going to necessarily be able to test your strategy. I mean, I guess you can have a simulation or something like that if the conditions were right, depending on what you were doing a strategy for, but that's not in the business world the way things are necessarily going to go, right? The test is going to come in the form of how well you do your research, right? How much preparation you do. And how well, of course, you use that research to anticipate the conditions. And then when you go to implement your strategy, you're probably not going to have gotten every single thing right. But the important thing is, whatever you didn't get right, you're going to know exactly where to plug it back in so that you can reconnect, pivot your strategy if you need to, and then react to the new set of conditions that you're anticipating or that are actually happening, right? And that's kind of the way strategy goes. It's this iteration of planned events versus actual events versus planned events versus actual events. And then all of that comes together to form your strategy. So the best test is spend the time analyzing the situation with respect to what you think is going to happen in the future. And the three things you analyze, the three things we always talk about here are, of course, your own company, your customers, and your competitors, right? In our framework, we expand those to include the environment around those things. So we kind of call it the business, the market, and the industry. All the same stuff, though. So those are the things you're going to be looking at, and you're going to, again, analyze those with respect to what you think is going to happen in the future, put your plan together based on that. That's going to be the best way to do it. And then the test comes when you actually start to implement it, right? Now, this is really, really important because when most people come to strategy workshops, which of course I deliver for a living, I spend a full half of the workshop on the situation analysis, right? Where have we been? Where are we now? How do we think that's going to translate into something in the future? And some people tend to get a little frustrated with that after day one because they're like, we spent it in a complete day going through, supposedly a strategic planning workshop, and we've spent the entire time on the present and the past, right? Why are we doing that? And then in day two, it comes together because they realize then that had we just jumped to the future without analyzing where we are now and where we've been, then what we put together to plan for the future would have been completely wrong. So strategy is equal parts analyzing your situation today and using that to come up with what you want to do in the future. That's how it all comes together. Now, again, I don't want to shortchange the answer of, are there ways to do testing? Yes, of course. And if your strategy is related to a specific product, let's say, and you've anticipated certain things as you're developing that product, then you can do user testing and things of that nature before you put the product out into the marketplace, especially if you have a software product, right? You could do various different simulations. You can have actual user testing. You can have beta testing. And you can do that with tangible products as well. So all of that is obviously possible to do some, testing in certain areas. Sometimes, companies test their strategies in pilot markets or in specific pilot areas before they implement it to the rest of the world or the rest of the region. So that's all common stuff as well. So it's not to say that you can't test your strategy out in smaller segments, smaller areas before you implement it on a greater scale. And companies do that quite a bit. And I recommend that if you have the type of strategy where you could do that. Again, consumer companies do this all the time, right? Before they put a product out, they'll test it in certain markets. And then, if it works, great, then they'll expand it. If it doesn't, then they won't. So that's definitely a common thing. But I kind of don't think that's what the question was getting to, right? Because I think what the question was getting to more was around, how can I be sure that the strategy is going to work before I implement it? And the short answer is you really can't, right? You really can't. You have to anticipate the best you can, do as much homework, do as much research as you can. Don't change yourself on that, and then try it out. If you try it on a smaller area, bigger area, whatever else, you're still trying it out. And then you're going to take whatever feedback you get from that trial, and then you're going to put it back into the strategy. And that's how this works. So hopefully that is a helpful answer. Again, if you have a question that you want to be featured on the show, please go visit us at dearstrategy.net. Click on the Contact Us link, and that'll take us to a form where you can ask a question to be featured on the show or give us feedback. Just tell us what's on your mind. We'd love to hear from you. Also, again, don't forget to go back out to strategygeneration.com and check that out. See if there's any workshops or any tools or services you might be interested in taking advantage of there. And while you're doing all that, don't forget to make time for the plan. We'll see you back here on another episode of Dear Strategy. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to Dear Strategy with Bob Caporelli. To learn more or to submit a question to be featured on our show, please visit us at dearstrategy.net.